What up, Wizards? It's Deb from The Place. We got Igby and the Chicken here today as special guests. It sounds like an indie band, but it's actually just my cats. Chicken just left. I've still got Igby here, cradled against my... You'll never leave me, will you, bud? Anyway, we got some Tarkir Dragonstorm spoilers to start the week off right for you. And we got a bunch more of them today. You know, the last couple of days we got spoilers. We got like 7, 8, at max. But today we got another 25 cards to look at. So we should go ahead and get to it. Now let's start with some of the commons we got to see today. As Igby's purring provides a steady thrumming bass line to the background, we're going to look at Temur Tawnyback as well as Storm Shrieker Feral here. Now Tawnyback actually looks relatively strong for like a limited common here. This is Temur colors, or it's got that funky casting cost. You can pay 2 mana instead of any of the colored pips in this casting cost. Now this is a 4/3 beast, and when it enters, you draw a card and then you discard a card. Actually pretty okay for any deck that wants to stock its graveyard, and I like that this is costed in such a way that a Sultai deck that is trying to do stuff with its graveyard can still pay 4 mana for a 4/3, which isn't a terrible rate, but 3 mana for a 4/3 with this enters the battlefield trigger is much more attractive. So Temur decks in Limited have a pretty good piece here, but I don't know if it goes anywhere outside that format. Now, Storm Shriek Feral over here appears to be getting hit by a lightning bolt in the art, which is not good for him because he's only got 3 toughness. This is 5 mana, 4 and a red for a 3/3 dragon with flying and haste. You can also pay 1 and a red and have it gain +1/+0 until end of turn. So pretty expensive fire breathing on the dude, but you can also cast, this is the actual name of the spell, Flush Out here. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a sorcery. It's an omen. You can discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. So stop me if you've heard that one before. It's a tormenting voice effect. We see a million of these nowadays, but we don't see them often stapled to 3/3 flying haste guys. So this one I think hits like all the right notes in terms of power level, right? Like this one's probably not a CD standard play or anything, but it is a pretty decent little dragon for Limited. I don't know what my voice did there for a second. All my Southern came out at once. I don't think it's going to see no standard play. I don't know. Sorry about that, but we'll move on to Dragon's Prey as well as Lightfoot Technique. Bump it up a little bit in terms of playability here, but I still don't think these quite make the mark outside of Limited, but they're really good there. Dragon's Prey is 3 mana, 2 and a black for an instant that costs 2 more to cast if it targets a dragon, and you just destroy target creature. So against non-dragons, this is just a strictly better murder, which is a super weird sentence, but yeah, murder costs 2 black and 1, whereas this costs 2 of anything and a black, so it's just much easier to fit into 3-color decks. Look at that, it's a 3-color set. So again, kind of a limited card here in some ways. I think that we'll just stick to our 2 mana and 1 mana removal in black. Thank you very much, because we have some of the best removal spells like of all time right now in standard in black, and I just don't think this really makes the cut. But at the same time, in Limited, it seems like a pretty decent removal spell. You'll play a bunch of copies of. Amazing that it's common, and yeah, you could make the argument that in Limited that is the format that houses the most creatures this cannot hit, but I still think you want to play all the copies. And Lightfoot Technique over here is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an instant. You put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It gains flying and indestructible until end of turn. So it's a Snakeskin Veil in white, I guess, and it also gives the creature flying, which means that it's much more versatile in some ways than a Snakeskin Veil, right? But it's also twice the price, which is only half as nice, like most of the time. So I don't think it's going to break into standard or anything, but it is a nice way to save your creature in Limited. Good little combat trick that you can use, on your opponent's turn when they swing in, get one of your dudes flying as a surprise, get in, block. Or you can use it on your turn before attacks are even made or whatever. To give a creature flying and, a little bit of evasion and get through more easily. So there's a lot of ways you can use this Snakeskin Veil, but I still think it's far inferior to Snakeskin Veil. It costs twice as much, and that matters. It's not a bad little card, though. I don't want to be seen to be knocking it too much. It's all right, but we'll move on to easily the best common of the day. I think there's kind of a huge gap between this and anything else we've looked at so far. It's Unending Whisper. This is a single blue mana for a sorcery. You draw a card. You also get to harmonize this for 5 and a blue. That's pretty amazing. And I keep talking this season about this Tolarian Terror, Eddie Merc Crab kind of deck, right? It's kind of been out of style lately, but every now and again you see the blue-green like Beanstalk version with This Town Ain't Big Enough pop up, right? So that deck isn't completely dead on Arena, and this could be a fantastic piece for that deck. Like, yeah, you got to tap down your Terror or your Crab or whatever, and you don't always want to do that, but a single blue mana to flash that's back effectively is just a really, really sick mode. So I like a lot about this card. Just a blue to draw a card is not like amazing, but you can do a lot worse than that some of the time too in your Spellslinger's deck. But the fact that this harmonizes is just like amazing to me. me at least. Also like the sort of callback to Whispers of the Muse, a card that I cast a lot in my life, but this isn't quite as good as Whispers was, but again, I still like the kind of attention they paid to the reference there, but just altogether a nice little common here, I think. And it's kind of ironic that this is the card I've gotten loudest about today, so let's kind of calm it down. Let's bring it back to a whisper and talk about some uncommons today. We got some good ones, but we got to start somewhere. So let's look at Loxodon, Battle Priest, and Bewildering Blizzard here first. Now, Battle Priest is 5 mana, 4 and a white for a 3/5 Elephant Cleric. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 creature, put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature you control. So it can't be on the Battle Priest, which is odd to me. Why not? I'm paying 5 mana for this. Let me put the counter on it. But no, you can't do that. So it's just like the worst Luminarch Aspirant you've ever seen. But I guess it might still be playable in limited, depending on what you're doing, right? Because this does give you turn over turn value. Make sure you're grinding in the trenches, and oftentimes Seal will come down to something like that. So again, I don't want to knock this too much. Maybe it's not as bad as I'm making it seem, but geez Louise, when you compare it to some other cards like it, it just does not come up looking good. Also, this is a weird perspective for the elephant's trunk. I don't know if anybody else feels that. He kind of looks Cthulhu-ish in this art. The Battle Priest does, but I don't know. I've just never really seen an elephant from this exact perspective before, and I don't know. It just kind of looks weird to me, but we'll move on. Why not? To Bewildering Blizzard here, which is cool, but is it 6 mana cool? I don't know. And I'm not trying to make a pun either. It really is a pretty cool card. 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue for an instant. You draw 3. Creatures your opponents control get -3/-0 till end of turn. So like a pseudo fog effect where you draw 3. Yeah, I'd pay like 5. Would I pay 6? Yeah, it sounds like it's not that much of a difference, but it's a huge difference. I think, again, this is a great card in Sealed, where you're so much more likely to not only get to the 6 mana required to play this, I'll play like 3 6-drops in Sealed. Like, I do not care. And this is a pretty good pick for it, but, it also helps you blast through, like, not only mistakes your opponents make in terms of attacking, whatever, but also just helps you, like, win in the trenches. Again, we were just talking about that a second ago. I think a lot of games of Seal will come down to just like, everybody's got 4 creatures and we're just trying to bust through each other's defenses. And when your opponent finally decides they can do that, not only do you null basically their entire or most of their attack stuff, but you also draw 3, and it just feels really swingy to me. So again, this could be worth one copy in your Sealed deck, but I'm pretty sure that's its only home, sadly. Then again, Commander players really like their draw 3s, so maybe I'm just missing something, but I think it costs a little too much even for that format, but we'll move on here to Kishla Trawlers coming up next, along with Glacial Dragon Hunt. Now, Trawlers is actually kind of neat. These are kind of good cards that are on screen right now, just letting you know ahead of time. Kishla Trawlers is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 3/2 human citizen. When it enters, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. When you do, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So this does require that you play, enough creatures in your deck to reliably trigger the ability. But it also wants you to play a bunch of instants and sorceries to, again, get the actual value off the card. So, this requires like some deck building on your part, but it shouldn't be too hard to put it together. And at that point, it's just like, Archaeomancer? Or a card like it. There's a bunch of these blue creatures that can return instants and sorceries from your yard to your hand, and sometimes they can be surprisingly relevant, like either in a combo capacity somewhere, or they can just be like solid commander cards. And I could see this being decent in both applications. So neat little card here that I'm not really sure where it's supposed to go like right now, and it may never actually do anything for its entire standard tenure, but it is one that you might have to look out for like a little more than you think, like at first glance, because stuff like this can every now and again do a thing. So just keep your mind out. It's a card that exists, but Glacial Dragon Hunt over here is a little bit more straightforward. This is a blue and a red for a sorcery. Draw a card, then you may discard a card. When you discard a non-land card this way, Glacial Dragon Hunt deals 3 damage to target creature. You can also harmonize this for 4, a red and a blue. So if you have a large enough creature, you just cast it for its original casting cost over again. This is kind of neat. It's like a little baby ill-timed explosion, That's a card that's really good. But I wish got more play in standard, but you see it every now and again in like Teamer Doppelgang and stuff. Just overall a decent card that I feel like could go in like Grixis Reanimator and control decks to pretty good effect. And this, again, is just like a little mini-me version of that. And I kind of like that about it. You can cast it twice. So a thing that fuels graveyard strategies and gets you deeper into your deck, filters cards, whatever you want to say. And also sometimes blows up a creature. Most of the time blows up a creature. That's fantastic, man. You can even dump a second copy of Dragon Hunt into your yard, deal 3 damage to a thing, and then harmonize either or, both copies later on in the game. So just kind of a sick little card here, I think it's kind of nice in the late game especially to be able to cycle through draws that may be kind of dead at the time, So altogether, not a bad rate for what you're actually getting, especially if you get full value off of it. So nice little card here. But very likely the best uncommon of the day, given current context and standard at least, was Sun Pearl Kieran. Ready your groans. Go ahead and cock back those groans before I read this text box, because you're going to unleash them in a second. This is 1 and a white for a 2/1 Kieran with flash and flying. Remember that flash, baby. When this enters, return up to 1 other non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. If it's a token, draw a card. So sure, you can draw a card off of it sometimes. That's kind of neat. I guess they're trying to cut down one of your Overlord of the Mistmore 2/1 flyer tokens. You flash this into play, draw a card, get a 2/1 flyer in place of the 2/1 flyer you lost. I guess that's kind of neat. But what this really is Pixie. It's just a 2-mana Pixie. Now, earlier I said if you take a Snakeskin Veil and you make it cost twice as much, that's not as good. And I guess I could say the same thing about this, but I think the flash is carrying hard here because, they're going to try to kill your Pixie. They're going to try to kill your fear of isolation or whatever. And this says non-land permanent, so this can too save, like an enchantment that's trying to get blown up, a Storm Chaser's Talent, or Hopeless Nightmare, or something like that. Whatever the play is, this saves a non-land permanent with it a flash. So it's not like, all these other things are pretty proactive, like Pixie, you have to play it, put it on the stack and hope something doesn't happen. It's got to come into play, enter the battlefield, trigger goes on the stack, hope something doesn't happen, return the card to your hand, try to cast it, hope something doesn't happen. And I guess that last step is still the same here, but you know what I'm saying? This has flash, so it's much more reactive than a Fear of Isolation or a Pixie. And honestly, this card could let those decks cut blue and Fear of Isolation all together and just really focus on white, and maybe do white black, or again white blue. You just cut Fear of Isolation because do you need 12 of these creatures? So I don't know, man. I just think this goes a long way to improving that deck, and it's already kind of a really, really good deck in standard. So does it need the help? I'm not too sure, but this is a pretty exciting card for players of that deck. For sure, this is going in. But let's get on to the rares and mythics, and it's time to start getting excited because there are 9 of these today, and most of them are absolutely wild. I mean, feral cards, dude. There's only a couple of cards today I really didn't love, so I'm kind of presenting these in no particular order, which means I'm going to start with the hypest commander card of the day. It's called the Spirit Dragons. This costs Wooburg, so 5 total mana, 1 of each color for an enchantment that says, dragons you control have indestructible. It's a pretty sweet line of text, but there's actually more. At the beginning of your upkeep, for each color, put a +1/+1 counter on a dragon you control of that color. If you put a +1/+1 counter on 5 dragons this way, you win the game, buddy, buckaroo. That seems like a pretty fun line of text too, right there. Even if it doesn't win you the game, you're still spreading +1/+1 counters on. You got 2-3 dragons, you're still getting counters. There's nothing wrong with that. But not only do you have to have 5 different dragons out, but they all have to be kind of different colors. They can share colors so long as you have 5 that add up to Wooburg, right? So neat card here that I'm pretty sure just definitely goes in, the Dragon and Commander, because that's a 5-color Commander deck that can cast this, and all of your creatures in the entire deck will have indestructible, which is a good enough line of text as it is. But then besides that, you just get to make them larger every turn. You get an alternate win con that just snaps off sometimes. But even if it doesn't, man, this is an insane card in those decks. So I guess they got them. And I know all of us content creators are going to try to make it happen in standard, but I don't know if I see it there necessarily. But altogether, this is a pretty easy card to go wild over. So start doing that if you're into it. But let's move on to maybe my least favorite rare of the day, because I smell a trap in Nature's Rhythm here, but Maybe it's a lot better than I want to think it is. This is 2 green and X for a sorcery. Search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield and then shuffle up. But this also has Harmonize X and 4 green. You may cast it from your graveyard for its Harmonize cost, right? You tap down a large dude. So the idea, I guess, with this is to dump it into your graveyard somehow, maybe you mill it or whatever, and then you tap one of your larger creatures and 4 other mana, and you just put like a Crater Hoof Behemoth into play, or something like that. But is that gonna work? I'm not like super convinced that this doesn't just always cost too much mana. The 4 mana mode, so long as you can tap down a 6 power creature, 7 power creature, or something like that, can probably be like pretty gross. So I don't want to completely discount this card, especially given that I think that's how it's going to be played most of the time. I don't know that you actually cast this for its normal casting costs, like 9 times out of 10. But if you do, here's the problem with it. This is my issue. If you do, you're just paying like way above curve for any creature in your deck. And if you want to go get a 5-drop, it's going to cost you like 1,000,000 mana, you know. But if you just want to go get a 3-drop, it costs you 5 mana. And like sometimes maybe to go get a Glissa Sunslayer or some other bomb 3-drop, that's going to be worth it. Or a combo piece, right? This kind of seems like a combo card to put your pieces into place. So again, I don't want to discount it too much. And again, one more time, all the cards today in the rare in mythic slot are just like wild. So like, again, I'll apply that tag to this card as well too. I just think that of all the cards we're going to look at today, it's the one that kind of sets off my alarms the most in terms of like, oh, people are going to pour, you know, wild cards and, you know, deck building hours into this, and I'm not sure it's going to work out. But this is one of those that like I really would rather be wrong on, because if you can just get a large-ish creature into play by hook or by crook, right? Like maybe you play a 6/6 on turn 3. We got a couple of creatures in standard that allow us to take those lines, and then on turn 4 with this in your yard, you just get like an enormous dude. Could work, but even then, that just kind of seems fair to me. People get huge like Atraxas on turn 4 all the time anyway. So whatever, you know? So I'm just not too sure. Maybe in some sort of mid-range deck that can take advantage of this in the late game, I could see it, but you're going to have to convince me. So let's keep pushing and look at Revival of the Ancestors. Cool little Abzan enchantment here. It costs 1, a white, a black, and a green for a Saga. On Chapter 1, create 3 1/1 white spirit creature tokens. On Chapter 2, distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures that you control. And on Chapter 3, creatures you control gain trample and lifelink until end of turn, which is a hot mode, Papa. Yeah, it's not bad at all, but it's going to be like turn 6 when that pops off. So again, maybe some sort of mid-range deck. It does give you 3 tokens when it comes into play, and that's not bad. You know, we have a card in standard right now that gives us 3 tokens for 3 mana. It's way easier to cast, right? So compared, this isn't as good on Chapter 1, right, as a card that we could have cast a turn earlier for less, you know, for better mana. But I do kind of like Chapter 2 more than I've seen a lot of people liking it, you know? Like, most people that talk about this card talk about Chapter 1 and Chapter 3, but I actually think Chapter 2 is phenomenal. If you already have other creatures into play. But of course, you could just make one of your tokens a 4/4. It allows you to do that the way it's worded. So you could also make them all, you know, 2/2s if that's what you'd rather do. I think that the lifelink is being undervalued on Chapter 3 as well. That could be fantastic if you actually get set up with it. So I'm kind of a fan of this. I don't know that it's going to really fit into an Abzan mid-range deck. It looks like one of those rares that they decided to make overpowered in terms of limited, right? And then put it in the rare slot so that you don't get it very often, so it doesn't break limited or anything, because I think there it's an incredibly good card. In standard, I'm less sold, but you could convince me a lot easier than the last card we looked at that this is a real card. Well, let's look at Windcrag Siege here. This gets the badge today for being exactly normal power level. More so than just about any card we're going to look at. This is exactly a 5, right? This is 3 mana, 1 a red and a white for an enchantment. As this enchantment enters, choose Mardu or Jeskai. If you chose Mardu, if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Okay, so it's Ishin, 2 Heavens is 1. You get another copy of Ishin, 2 Heavens is 1. Okay, so if you chose Jeskai, at the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. It gains lifelink and haste until end of turn. So that mode is not an Urabrass Forge, but it's still okay. You know, it gets you turn over turn value. I'll take the lifelink too. I think that lifelink is more or less always undervalued. It's a good ability, but you know, I don't hate the Jeskai mode on this whatsoever. I'll take a token every turn. You don't have to sack the token at end of combat like some of these would do. So altogether, that could be good for generating, turn over turn board state. Not bad. Decent, I think, in these like sweepery decks that are Boros, but again, I don't think it replaces Forge in those decks. As far as the Mardu mode goes, maybe we can cook a little bit, but I think mostly where this goes is in that aforementioned Ishin Two Heavens is one deck in Commander where you just definitely slot this in every single time, right? It's just, redundancy. So it's got a home there, if nothing else. But again, I kind of look at this as a very normal Magic card. It's definitely not overpowered. I don't think in any way, but you will play it in some spots, and you really would be hard-pressed to call this a straight-up bad Magic card. It's exactly kind of where I want to be. Now, Scavenger Regent over here is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 4/4 dragon with flying, and ward discard a card. Okay. All right, but you can also cast Exude Toxin for double black and X. This is a sorcery. It's also an omen. Each non-dragon creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. So that could get hefty. If you want to do -3/-3, then suddenly you're paying 5 mana. And a lot of, black sorceries will cost 3 mana to -2/-2 everything. So you're still kind of, off that rate by a whole mana if you want to do it. But I still think this is pretty good. I'm from a time where we cast Meat Hook Massacres. I'm still casting them now today, as a matter of fact. And you'd be surprised, and perhaps you wouldn't be if you played against Massacre. A lot of us have, at just how good -1/-1 or -2/-2 can be. Just devastating to some boards. And obviously, if you're the player casting it, it'll save a lot of your creatures too. You probably won't blow up your own Preacher of the Schism with this. You probably won't blow up your own Sheldred or, whatever with this, so long as it has 4+ toughness. So I think that there's going to be a lot of board states where it's worth going up to 4 to 5 mana, resolving this, blowing up most of the creatures on the board, but maybe keeping one of your dudes, your opponent keeps one of theirs. I think it's going to be worth it a lot of the time. Just a pseudo sweeper that also comes on a pretty decent body. I mean, a 4 mana 4/4 flyer is not what it used to be, but ward discard a card really improves your stock in my book. So kind of awesome here. Again, I'm not sure where we slot this, but it might just be one of those generically powerful cards that any Golgari deck, for instance, can find room for a silver bullet copy of, or maybe even more depending on how good it actually turns out to be. But next, let's take a look at a pretty cool card, man. It's Songcrafter Mage down here. He's rocking out. This is Teamer colors, so 3 mana, a green, a blue, and a red for a human bard that has Flash. Remember that. This dude is a 3/2, and when he enters, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains Harmonize until end of turn. Its Harmonize cost is equal to its mana cost. So Songcraft or Snapcaster Throwback, y'all know it's cracked. The return of the Mac. This card is actually pretty sick, dude. Like, it's amazing that it has Flash. It's pretty sick that they just slap that on there. So now if you have 5 mana, you can do dang near anything. So I really like that about this, man. If you have just 1 or 2 open mana, it can tap itself down and then harmonize something out of your yard all by its lonesome. But obviously, if you have larger creatures in play, that's even better. But I like how much this card can do all by itself. I mean, for just 1 extra mana when this comes into play, you could theoretically cast like a 4 mana instant or sorcery out of your graveyard, and that is amazing. Imagine what you could do if you had a couple of extra mana just laying around when you resolve this guy. So pretty incredible little card. This is not Snapcaster Mage. I mean, obviously, right? But it's probably about the best Snapcaster Mage variant that we've seen in a while, and that's saying something because they tend to love to print Snapcaster Mage variants, and they hardly ever see any play, so I'm not sure that this is destined to either, especially given the somewhat difficult casting cost, and even if you can make the colors, it kind of firmly puts you in Teamer, so how good can that actually be? We'll see. It might have a place in like Teamer Doppelgang. Feel like I'm going to bring that deck up a lot this season because, getting a lot of good Teamer cards. But still, I think this definitely could go in there just to recast Doppelgang on a later turn of the game, or recast all kinds of stuff, just removal spells and ill-timed explosion, whatever. So this is just a really, really sick little Magic card, dude, that I'm pretty sure is going to see some standard play because someone will do something around it. Even if I have to build the entire deck around it, I think somebody will figure it out. But the secret here is that I don't think you have to build the entire deck around it. I think there are pre-existing shells that accommodate this dude like super well. Started that one with a bar and ended it with an accidental bar, but we'll move on to Naga Fleshcrafter here. This is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 0/0 snake shapeshifter. You may have this creature enter as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. At all. Not just something you control, but anything. It also has Renew. Pay 2 and a blue and exile this card from your yard. Put a +1/+1 counter on target non-legendary creature you control. Each other creature you control becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. So most, if not all, of the hubbub, all the buzz around this card has been about Commander, and it's easy to see why. You have more, the sky is not even the limit in Commander. You have the entire stratosphere and beyond into space itself to experiment with this card, with every creature in the whole of Magic history aside from the couple of banned ones, right? So there's so many just absolutely off the leash things you can do in Commander for only 3 mana without ever having to actually resolve this card to the table. Just make sure it ends up at your graveyard somehow. And by the way, when you do it, it's uncounterable. All that is just kind of insane. I don't know why that's on a Magic card in 2025, but even in Standard, I think this could have some real playability. You know, the ability is actually somewhat cheap depending on like when in the game you're activating it. There's a lot of stuff just in this set this turns into well, so it's got a couple of cool drafty combos. We just saw that guy the other day that has like Mobilize X, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Just turn all of your guys into that guy, attack, and you get like, I don't know, 50,000 tokens. So it's in that realm somewhere. But there's a bunch of other tricks just in limited alone with cards from this set you can do. Just imagine all the big non-legendary dragons in this set. You know, you can do stuff with this card. But, you know, apart from just making all your dudes like huge or evasive or whatever, there's a lot of fun things, tricks you can do in Standard with this card. Just turning all of your guys into like a Preacher of the Schism is pretty baseline, but it's great when you get all those attacks triggers popping off. So, you know, just with basic thinking, you can come up with a few ridiculous things for this card to do. Just turn all of your creatures into Enduring Curiosity and draw your whole deck. You know, like just come on. You put like 3 seconds of thought into this and suddenly it starts seeming insanely good. So yeah, dude, I think that this could actually have some like real clout in Standard, but obviously once you get to Commander, it's going to be an all-timer, baby. This is a ridiculous Magic card in so many ways. So what's better than that, you might ask, especially given how much I'm freaking out about it? Well, again, that one's value is mostly in Commander, so we'll move to a card that I think could have a lot of potential value in Standard, and that is Rot Curse Rakshasa. 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 5/5 demon with trample, and it also has Decayed. In case you forgot what that does, it means it can't block, and when it attacks, you sack it at end of combat, so pretty big downside. But also, this has Renew as well. This ability's alright. You can pay X and double black and exile this from your yard. To put a Decayed counter on each of up to X target creatures, activate only as a sorcery. So, okay, sorcery speed is a little bit lame, but most Renew abilities tend to be sorcery speed from what we've seen so far. This, though, could really shift things, you know, like put 3 Decayed counters on your opponent's guys, and then suddenly things are looking a little bit different, you know? So I don't think this is the best Renew ability in the world, but I do think it's a pretty interesting Renew ability that can shift the game a good bit. What I'm excited about is a 2 mana 5/5 trample. I mean, it's not like Ball Lightning, because you have to wait a turn to attack with it, and it can't block or anything, but it's close. It's the closest thing we've seen to a Black Ball Lightning in a good long time, right? So this also just benefits from being a 5/5. You know, like not only is it a 5/5, but it is a creature the whole time. It is a 5/5. So like, unlike the Overlords or something, you know, those aren't creatures if you play them for 3 mana, or at least they won't be for a few turns, right? This is a creature, so it's going to count. You know, anything that wants you to have a creature, say, power 4 or greater, is going to see this, you know, starting on turn 2 or 3 or whatever. So I think that's pretty decent. I also just think playing 4 copies of this in like a mono black aggro deck is good. It's just generally a good thing, because even if you do, you know, play it on turn 2, attack with it on turn 3, sure, okay, it goes to your graveyard. But however, you got 5 damage in, and you trampled over 2. Your opponent probably didn't chump block that because of the trample, right? So it just seems like a 2 mana 5 damage card. And again, you can play pump spells on it. They have to waste removal spells on it if they don't want to take the 5. Like, all that's good. And it also gets returned to play with like a return the past, which is kind of a neat little line, but I don't know how often you're going to be seeing it. Either way, there's a lot of cool things that just having an early 5-power creature can do in terms of like triggering other effects. So I like that, but mostly I just want to attack with a 5/5 on turn 3. I don't care if it dies, I'll take it, right? So just a neat little dude. You do not see 2-mana 5/5s every day, or basically ever, so I should probably point this guy out. Also, one more thing, good with, stuff like, I think, Lively Dirge, right? Like stuff, again, that cares about the mana cost of the creatures that it's bringing back. We'll move on to what I think is my favorite card of the day, which is wild, considering, like, how much I like the cards today. But we put Corey Steel Cutter at the end of today's cards. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for an artifact. It's an equipment that equips for 1 and a red. The equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample and haste. Couple of very good abilities for sure, but we're not done because this also has Flurry. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you get a 1/1 white monk creature token with prowess. You may attach this equipment to it if you feel like doing that. So you can equip this to stuff, or at least the monks, right, without ever paying the equip cost for it. That's excellent. So you get this on turn 2. And then on turn 3, you play 2 spells. You get a monk, you equip this up. That guy has a 2/2 trample haste now with prowess. If you somehow can cast another spell, that seems all right. So really neat thing here, man. This can get you, and like the monk doesn't die at end of turn. The monk is not, tapped and attacking or anything like that. You just get to hang out with the monk. So when you compare it to other 2-drop cards that do this, like Young Pyromancer, Third Path Iconoclast, Gremlin Tamer, there's a bunch of these. This only gets you a thing once per turn. That kind of sucks. It's no Monastery Mentor, but it's worth noting that it does cost, 1/3 less than a Monastery Mentor, but either way, it does make a dude with prowess as well. So that seems great. We've seen on like Storm Chaser's Talent how good these little 1/1 prowess tokens can be. So I know it costs twice as much as a talent, but you'll be getting a lot of 1/1 tokens off of this. And obviously, if you go, anything on turn 2 into this plus spell on turn 3, you're immediately getting a 2/2 trample haste on that turn. And that is a lot of value. Not to mention, you should be able to get one pretty easily for the next few turns. So especially if you can keep your hands stocked and get this throughout the game, then you're doing something right, man. I just think this is a pretty exciting little flurry ability to slap onto an equipment. If it were just an artifact with the flurry ability, I would still be kind of excited about it, but it's even better than that, like unlike like creatures with this ability, this isn't quite as removable as the creatures would be. But unlike an artifact that just sits there on the table like a grapefruit and doesn't really have any extra value, this can actually like do other stuff. It goes on creatures. And if you resolve a large guy in the late game and have extra mana, just giving like your 4/4 trample and haste and +1/+1 is a big game. So I just like so much about this. And I usually don't sit here and gush and gish gallop over equipments. I'm not really an equipment kind of guy, but this one is just like really calling my name. I like this card a lot. But that is Itski Lewitsky for Tarkir spoilers today. We're going to get a bunch more before the week is out. Don't worry. I think tomorrow is the day with like the most spoilers this week. Plus then Wednesday, plus then Thursday, plus then Friday. I think we get that common dump. I think this week I will move the stream to Friday to make sure that when we speed run the entire set is actually out. I think it's important that the whole set is out when we do the thing. So join us if you'd like to on twitch.tv/SBMTGDev. Link in the description if you'd like to follow. Later on this week, I will be speed running a review of every single card in this set and assigning a number to it. That's always fun for you and for me too. I gotta admit, I have a good time. But if you're interested in that, make sure you check out the Twitch. But apart from that, sub to the sandwich to make sure that you get the rest of the Tarkir Dragonstorm spoiler season videos and beyond. Top 10 sleepers, top X cards. I'll probably have to do a top 50 this time around. I always get with Power Dragon, talk about the overrated, underrated cards in the set. We do deck techs and blah, blah, blah. Top 3 new decks of the week once the set comes out. You're going to want to be subbed to the Meatball if you want this content, this hot, this sexy content. Apart from that, I guess that's it, right? Watch all my other spoiler videos and actually every other video I've ever made. Watch all of them now. And yeah, I guess let me know how you felt about the stuff today. And like what decks you're building as soon as Tarkir comes out, what cards you want from this set. I am always interested to hear. I read your comments. I do. I'm one of the few YouTubers left in the world to read your comments. That's all I've got for this one. I'm donezo for this onezo, baby. So I will catch you cats later. I am Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.